Hello everyone, welcome to the course of Survey of Major English-Speaking Countries. Today, we are going to learn Chapter 9, General Introduction of the United States. This lecture is about Lesson B, the general introduction of the capital city, Washington, D.C. When you hear people talking about Washington, D.C., you may want to know what the letters D.C. mean. They mean District of Columbia. Washington, the capital city of the United States, is in the District of Columbia, not, as you might expect, in the state of Washington. Washington State is thousands of miles away on the northwest coast. There are also several other towns called Washington in the United States. Washington, D.C., formerly the District of Columbia and commonly referred to as Washington, D.C., is the capital of the United States. Founded after the American Revolution as the seat of government of the newly independent country, the city was named after George Washington, the much-loved, much-admired, much-respected first president, as well as a founding father of the United States. As the seat of the United States federal government and several international organizations, Washington is an important world political capital. The city is also one of the most visited cities in the world, with more than 20 million tourists every year. All three branches of the United States federal government are centered in the district: Congress, legislative, president, executive, and the Supreme Court, judicial. Washington is home to many national monuments and museums, primarily situated on or around the National Mall. The city hosts 177 foreign embassies, as well as the headquarters of many international organizations, trade unions, non-profits, lobbying groups, and professional associations, including the World Bank Group, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the National Geographic Society, the International Fire Corporation, and the American Red Cross. Like many decisions in American history, the location of the new city was to be a compromise. Alexander Hamilton and the northern states wanted the new federal government to assume Revolutionary War debts, and Thomas Jefferson and the southern states who wanted the capital placed in a location friendly to slave-holding agricultural interests. President George Washington chose the exact site today, and the city was officially founded in 1790 after both Maryland and Virginia ceded land to these new districts to be distinct and distinguished from the rest of the states. To design the city, he appointed Pierre Charles L'Enfant, who presented a vision for a bold, modern city featuring ground streets and ceremonial spaces. He planned a grid system at which the center would be the Capitol building. Now, let's take our first look at the Capitol. For a few moments, you may feel you are dreaming that you have stepped back through the centuries into ancient Greece. Many of the beautiful, shining white buildings are built in the noble style of the ancient Greek temples, and stand in wide avenues amid trees and fountains. Most of them are museums or government offices. Government is the chief business of Washington. The chief government building is called the Capitol. With its high dome, it looks a little like St. Paul's Cathedral in London or St. Peter's in Rome. It stands on a hill overlooking the city, which is divided by Rock Creek Park. As the architects put it, the United States Capitol is among the most architecturally impressive and symbolically important buildings in the world. It has housed the meeting chambers of the Senate and the House of the Representatives for almost 2 centuries. Begun in 1793, the Capitol has been built, burned, rebuilt, extended, and restored. Today, it stands as a monument not only to its builders, but also to the American people and their government. In addition to its use by Congress, the Capitol is a museum of American art and history. It stands as a focal point of the government's legislative branch and as a centerpiece of Capitol Hill and the National Mall. The National Mall is a large, open park in the downtown Washington between the Lincoln Memorial and the United States Capitol. Given its prominence, the mall is often the location of political protests, concerts, festivals, and presidential inaugurations. The Washington Monument and the Jefferson Pier are near the center of the mall, south of the White House. Also on the mall are the National Second World War Memorial at the east end of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, the Korean War Veteran Memorial, and the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. Along White Avenue called the mall led to the Capitol. At the other end of this avenue, a tall, white, needle-like building points to the sky. This is, of course, the highest needle in the world, the Washington Monument. Built to honor George Washington, the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army and the first President of the United States. The Washington Monument was once the tallest building in the world at just over 555 feet. The monument to America's first president still holds the title of the world's tallest stone structure. The monument has been a witness to the history that shaped the nation. Popular in the spring with school groups and in summer with family vacationers, the Washington Monument is a must-see for anyone visiting Washington, D.C. This is the city where Americans remember their famous presidents. The Jefferson Memorial is a very beautiful white building in the shape of a circle. Its roof is supported by tall columns. Inside stands a statue of President Jefferson. It is Americans' foremost memorial to the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is one of the Americans' most notable founding fathers. He was also the author of the Declaration of Independence, drafter of American Constitution, governor of Virginia, and he held numerous other positions and is credited with numerous other achievements. The Lincoln Memorial is a huge white building. Inside, you can see a famous statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting in a great chair. The Lincoln National Memorial honors the 16th and perhaps the greatest president of the United States, and symbolizes his belief in the freedom and the dignity of all people. Lincoln saved the Union, but in doing so, he also preserved Americans' high ideals. The memorial is one of the country's beloved shrines. In the 20th century, it became a powerful symbol of the continuing struggle to extend one of the nation's founding principles: all men are created equal. Visitors climb a long monumental staircase to reach the imposing main entrance. The seated figure, apparently lost in thought, faces the Washington Monument across the length of the reflecting pool. Lincoln's powerful rhetorical defined issue of the war for the nation and the world. His words continue to provide inspiration for posterity. The chamber on each side enshrine two of his great speeches. The North Chamber contains an inscription of his second inaugural address, and the Gettysburg's address adorns the wall on the South Chamber. Within a short time of its dedication, millions of people were visiting the Lincoln Memorial every year, some out of curiosity, some looking for peace and strength. On a beautiful day in August 1963, 200,000 participants in the March on Washington heard the human rights fighter Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech from the steps of the memorial. For millions of people, Americans and others, this memorial is an enduring symbol of freedom. Everyone, of course, wants to see the White House. On my second visit to Washington, a stranger came up to me and asked if I knew where the White House was. I felt very pleased to be able to give him directions. The White House really is white, clean, shining white, and the beautiful gardens around it make it look like a pleasant American country house. The White House is the official residence and the principal workplace of the President of the United States. At various times in history, the White House has been known as the Palace of the President and the Government House. President Theodore Roosevelt officially gave the White House its current name in 1901. Like its inhabitants throughout history, the house has seen conflicts, controversy, and surprising transformations. Open free to the public, the White House reflects the history of the nation through the various collections and characters that each of its residents have left on the walls, serving as a global symbol of the American nation. You could spend days at the Smithsonian Institute, which includes 16 buildings, housing the Museum of Natural History, National Gallery of Art, Art and Industry buildings, and several others. The Smithsonian Institution is an educational foundation chartered by Congress in 1846 that maintains most of the nation's official museums and galleries in Washington, D.C. The U.S. government partially funds the Smithsonian, and its collections are open to the public, free of charge. The Smithsonian's location have a total of 30 million visits every year. The most visited museum is the National Museum of Natural History. The museum's collection contains over 126 million specimens of plants, animals, fossils, minerals, rocks, meteorites, human remains, and human culture artifacts. It is also home to about 185 professional natural history scientists, the largest group of scientists dedicated to the study of natural and cultural history in the world. The other most visited museum is the Air and Space Building, which is packed with the history of flying, from the early days up to our own time of space travel. It is exciting to see a model of the strange-looking machine which, in 1969, landed 2 men on the moon. Also, the actual spaceship in which the 3 Americans traveled safely back to Earth, ending the greatest adventure in history of the world. Here, you will feel close to it all and astonished that it was ever possible. The museum is a center for research into the history and science of aviation and spaceflight, as well as planetary science. Almost all space and aircraft on display are originals or the original backup craft. This museum has one of the largest collections of still flying antique aeroplanes and spaceships in the country. The items on display at this museum are not only full of history, they are full of life. Many people visiting the city will also make the interesting 15-mile boat trip down the broad Potomac River to the home of George Washington, which is at Mount Vernon in the state of Virginia. You can eat and drink on the boat and enjoy music and dancing by moonlight. George Washington's home is a simple white country house, kept just as it was when he lived there. American parents from all parts of the country bring their children to this famous and popular place, for they are all taught at a school that George Washington was the father of the country.